What if our oldest stories are more than just myths? What if, buried in ancient clay, a forgotten history is waiting to be read? Some of our earliest texts, the Sumerian tablets, tell of a great flood that wiped the world clean. But they also contain a shocking detail. They speak of powerful beings, sometimes called giants or gods, who walked the earth before that flood. The most startling question is not what came before, it is what came after. The tablets leave us with a profound mystery. Did they come back after the flood? This question changes how we see our own beginning. Our journey starts in a land once called Sumer, southern Iraq. Over 4,000 years ago, a civilization thrived there. They built great cities. They invented writing. They looked up at the stars. They recorded their thoughts, their laws, and their deepest beliefs on simple tablets of clay. Not grand monuments, but humble records that still speak. To understand the stories, we must first understand the people who wrote them and the world that shaped their minds. Their home was a land of stark, powerful contrasts, a place that forged a civilization unlike any that had come before. The Sumerians lived in southern Mesopotamia, a sun-scorched plain we now know as southern Iraq. It was a difficult, demanding land, wedged between vast, unforgiving deserts. Survival here was never guaranteed. It had to be earned day by day from the soil. Through this arid world flowed two great arteries of life, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. They carried rich silt down from the mountains, creating a ribbon of impossible fertility in the middle of the wasteland. This was the heart of the Fertile Crescent. But these life-giving waters were also agents of chaos. Each spring, the snowmelt from distant mountains would swell the rivers into a violent, unpredictable torrent. These devastating floods could wipe out a year's worth of work in a single day, erasing fields and settlements. This duality defined their existence. Their world stretched to a flat, seemingly infinite horizon where the immense dome of the sky met the earth. It's no wonder their gods were embodiments of these overwhelming forces. The sky god Anu, the storm god Enlil, and the water god Enki. They saw divinity in the storm clouds, the rushing river, and the fertile soil that miraculously grew their barley. Their civilization, one of the world's first, rose from this mud around 4500 BC. They were relentless innovators. To survive, they had to be. They mastered large-scale irrigation, digging canals to tame the rivers and direct water to their crops. They built monumental temple towers called ziggurats, stairways of mud brick reaching for the heavens, connecting the mortal and divine realms. And in a leap that would change humanity forever, they created the wheel, the sail, and the first known system of writing, cuneiform. Their society was a collection of fiercely independent city-states, legendary names like Ur, Uruk, and Eridu, each protected by its own patron god, whose home was the city's great temple. In their view, humanity was created for a single purpose, to serve the gods. People were laborers, tasked with feeding, clothing, and housing these powerful unseen beings in magnificent sanctuaries, lest they abandon the city to ruin. This cosmic order was reflected on Earth. City-states fought brutal wars over land and water. Kings and dynasties rose and fell. Their myths mirrored that constant turmoil, telling stories of divine conflicts that echoed their own earthly struggles. Power, both divine and mortal, was the ultimate prize in a world that felt perilously intimate with the gods. Crucially, they believed all the gifts of civilization, from agriculture to law, from kingship to writing itself, were not invented, but handed down from the sky. This core belief, that humanity was a student of the gods, shaped everything they thought, built, and wrote. The script itself is a marvel, called cuneiform, from the Latin for wedge. Scribes did not use pen and ink. They used a reed stylus, pressing marks into wet clay, tablets baked in the sun or fired to become hard and durable. Clay endured where paper would rot and stone was slow to carve. Learning cuneiform took years. It evolved into hundreds of signs, some for words, some for syllables, so they wrote ledgers and long stories, poems and laws. The Epic of Gilgamesh, among the world's first great works, tells of a survivor of a great flood. They recorded royal deeds, markets, and even recipes, life, line by line in clay. We can still see the pressure of a hand, sometimes even a fingerprint. These were not fantasies to them, but a form of truth, history, science, and religion pressed into clay. We hold their fears, hopes, and beliefs, hardened, legible, profoundly human. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim, mighty offspring of divine beings and human women. Their name could mean giants or the fallen ones. But this story has older roots. Sumerian clay tablets tell of the Anunnaki, who came from the heavens to the earth. Both traditions share a great flood story, a world reset by the gods. Yet Genesis hints the Nephilim returned even after the flood, leaving an enduring mystery written in clay and scripture. The great flood was meant to be a final cleansing act, a cataclysm to wash the slate of creation clean. Yet from the silt and the silence, life begins anew. The waters recede not on an empty world, but on one poised for a second chance, a new beginning. And according to the Sumerian scribes, this new world doesn't start on its own. Kingship, they wrote, was lowered from heaven once more. It wasn't a human invention, but a divine gift, a tool to rebuild order from chaos. With this act, history resumes its forward march. But did everything truly start over? A haunting phrase found in the Hebrew book of Genesis suggests a profound continuity. It speaks of the Nephilim, the mighty ones, being on the earth before the flood, and also afterward. That single, almost casual addition, and also afterward, has fueled centuries of speculation. It opens a door the flood was meant to seal shut, implying that these powerful, enigmatic beings either survived the deluge or returned in its wake. Sumerian myths seem to support this idea, showing gods like Enki and Inanna deeply involved in the post-flood world. They are not distant, abstract forces, but active teachers, instructing humanity in agriculture, law, craftsmanship, and the complex rules of civilization. But the evidence is subtle, written between the lines of myth and poetry. It is fragmentary, pieced together from broken tablets, and its interpretation remains fiercely debated among scholars. No clear line states that giants return to walk the earth. The entire theory hinges on nuance, on the interpretation of a single word, the meaning of a puzzling gap in the text, and the willingness to connect disparate traditions. Yet the Sumerian king list tempts us with a pattern too striking to ignore. Pre-flood kings reign for impossibly vast lengths of time. After the flood, the reigns, while still heroic, shrink dramatically and consistently over time. The list records Jusha of Kish, ruling for 1,200 years. Generations later, the famous Gilgamesh, himself described as 2/3 god, reigns for a mere 126 years. Many scholars now consider Gilgamesh a real historical king of Uruk, his life and deeds later embellished into epic myth. This grounds the list, at least partially, in reality. This observation fuels a compelling theory, that the first post-flood kings were direct, divine human hybrids, inheritors of a celestial longevity. And as these rulers intermarried with mortals, their extraordinary lifespans diluted with each passing generation, a divine inheritance slowly fading into the noise of human biology. Mainstream scholars, however, argue that we are reading the list too literally. They contend the numbers are symbolic, a form of political theology, not biology. In this view, a long reign doesn't signify a long life, but rather the king's importance, his divine favor, or his place within a complex system of numerology whose full meaning we no longer grasp. If giants, hybrids, or gods did return to guide the new age of humanity, the clay speaks of them only in hints, patterns, and whispers. To find clearer answers, we have no choice but to go back to the tablets themselves, to study their cracks, decipher their gaps, and respect the hard limits of what 2,000 years of dust and decay have allowed to survive. These tablets are real, unearthed in Iraq, housed in museums around the world, and now digitized so anyone can study them closely. You see chips, cracks, whole sections missing. Translators make careful, educated reconstructions. Small choices can change big meanings. This archive is beautiful and incomplete. A shock-then-proof style makes stunning claims about returning giants, but compelling edits can oversimplify complex evidence. It's easy to lift a line, harder to honor the gaps. Similar myths can arise from shared problems or shared stories along ancient trade routes. The Sumerian flood passed through empires, likely shaping Genesis. The connections are real, yet the leap to returning giants is large. Most experts see mythology, not memoir. Even so, the question endures and draws us deeper into Sumer. It invites us to study their language, history, and art, and how myth and memory intertwine. These marks are voices across 4 millennia, asking if our oldest myths are stories, or faint memories of a stranger past.